I didn't realize how small my life had become until I heard myself apologize for breathing too loud in my own living room. Most of my life is basic. I work evenings at a neighborhood grocery store, stocking shelves and sweeping floors. The paycheck is small but steady, and for a long time that felt like enough. Then I met Lena. She was behind the bar at the dive down the street, loud and funny, calling me Boy Scout because I said please, thank you, and tipped too much. She made me feel like my boring life was just a phase. We started dating fast. Within a few months, her overnight bag turned into half my closet. She joked she was basically living here already, so splitting the rent made sense. And I said yes without thinking much past that. At first, life with her felt fun. She'd bring me fries at closing and make me sit on the curb with her. We'd stay up late talking and laughing. She said we'd never be that silent couple at a diner, staring at their plates. The first warning signs came as jokes. If I forgot to text on my break, she'd say, "Nice to know where I rank." If I wanted a quiet night in, she'd tell our friends, "He's 80 on the inside." Everyone laughed. I laughed too. The jokes got meaner. If I misheard her, she'd roll her eyes and say, "You never listen." If I asked her to rinse a dish, she'd snap, "Relax, neat freak, this isn't a hotel." Each comment was small, but together they made me feel like a screw-up in my own home. Money slipped the same way. My paycheck showed up every Friday. Hers depended on tips. When she asked if I could cover a bit more for now, it sounded reasonable. "Can you grab rent this month?" she asked once, head in my lap. "I helped my coworker with gas and I'm short. Next month I'll be fine, I swear." Next month came. The excuse changed, but the result didn't. Slow week. Car trouble. Someone she owed. Every story ended with, "You're my rock. We're a team." Being her rock meant I wasn't allowed to ask for much. If I brought up bills, her voice would go quiet. "I'm sorry I'm such a burden," she'd whisper. "You probably wish you were with someone who has their life together." Guilt did the rest. I'd rush to tell her she wasn't a burden, that I loved her, that it was okay. Then I'd pick up extra shifts while she went out after work to decompress with her coworkers. Nothing exploded. It was just this steady erosion. If I made plans with my brother, she'd sigh and say, "Must be nice to be everybody's favorite." If I got home a little late, she'd go distant and insist I was overthinking when I asked what was wrong. I started moving through my own house like a guest, checking my phone before I walked in, trying to read her mood from a few messages, replaying normal conversations in my head, apologizing first, just to be safe. The night things finally clicked, she'd invited two coworkers over to watch a game. I'd just finished a long shift, back aching, feet sore. When I opened the door, the place was a mess. Clothes on the couch, dishes in the sink, nothing ready. "I thought you were going to pick up a little," I said carefully. "They'll be here soon." She didn't look up from her phone. "You're better at it," she said. "You actually care if people think we live in trash." Something in me snapped quietly. "I've been on my feet for 9 hours," I said. "Can we split it? They're your friends." She finally looked at me like I'd said something unforgivable. "Wow," she said. "So now I'm lazy. You know what I deal with at the bar, and you want to nag me about dishes?" I tried to explain I just needed help. Every sentence came back twisted into proof that I didn't support her. By the time there was a knock on the door, I was apologizing again. For my tone, my timing, all of it. Her co-workers walked into a clean living room with snacks on the table because I'd scrambled to fix everything. Lena wrapped an arm around my waist and told them, "He takes such good care of me. I'd fall apart without him." They laughed. I smiled like everything was fine. Inside, my chest felt tight and empty. Later, when the apartment was finally quiet, I stood in the middle of the living room and heard my own words replay in my head. "Sorry. My bad. I shouldn't have said anything." For the first time, another thought spoke louder than the guilt. What if I'm not the problem here? Once I let myself think, what if I'm not the problem? It was like a light turned on in a filthy room. I couldn't unsee the mess. The next few weeks, I started paying attention instead of just reacting. Not fighting, not apologizing first, just watching. Patterns popped out. If Lena had a good night at work and came home in a decent mood, she was sweet and clingy, kissing my cheek, talking about future trips we'd take, Once we're not broke. If she had a bad night, I became the punching bag. Not physically, just little verbal jabs, cold shoulders, jokes that left bruises you couldn't see. I also started noticing how often I heard, "You're overreacting." "I never said that." Or, "You're making stuff up." She'd deny things I knew she'd said word for word, then act hurt I didn't trust her. One night she came home way later than usual. No text, no call. Her makeup was smudged, hair messy, smelling like smoke and cheap perfume. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You okay? You're really late." She tossed her bag on the floor. "You tracking me now?" she snapped. "Relax. We had a staff meeting and then everyone went out. Sorry, I have a social life." "I'm not mad you went out," I said. "I just worry when it's 3 a.m. and I don't hear from you." She rolled her eyes. "My phone died. God, you get so clingy sometimes. It's suffocating." Clingy, for wanting to know she was safe. I went to bed feeling like I'd done something wrong again. The next week, I caught her in a lie without even trying. She told me she had a double shift. Later that night, my coworker Jason texted me a blurry photo from a different bar across town. "Isn't this your girl?" he wrote. "She's here with some people from work." There she was, clear as day, sitting too close to some guy, his hand on the back of her chair, her head tipped toward him, laughing. I stared at that photo for a long time. My hands didn't even shake. I just felt tired. When she got home, it was the same story as always. Long night, rough customers, feet killing her. "How was your double?" I asked. She flopped on the couch, kicking off her shoes. "Awful," she said. "People are disgusting. You're lucky you just deal with cereal boxes." It would have been easy to blow up right there. Wave my phone in her face, scream, demand answers. Instead, I heard that quiet voice again. "Pay attention." The next few days, I tested things. Small, harmless lies. I told her my shift got moved later and watched her reaction. She instantly asked if I could send her some extra cash for groceries since I'd get off too late to cook. I told her my brother wanted to visit and stay with us for a weekend. She went cold, then snapped that our place was too small for guests and she didn't want to entertain. But if one of her co-workers wanted to crash on our couch after a late night, no problem. I'd come home to some stranger snoring in my living room, and she'd shrug. They had nowhere to go. "You're not heartless, right?" Every boundary I tried to set became proof that I was controlling or selfish. Every sacrifice she asked of me was what people do when they're in love. The more I watched, the more I saw how carefully this whole thing was arranged. Any complaint from me turned into an attack on her. Any complaint from her was a reasonable concern. One morning I checked our bank app while I waited for my bus. I'd just been paid. Rent was due soon. The number staring back at me was way lower than it should have been. Lena had access to my card for emergencies. According to the statement, there had been a whole lot of emergencies at bars, liquor stores, and delivery apps. When I confronted her, she didn't deny it. She just cried. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I just get stressed and spend without thinking. You know how messed up my family is. Money freaks me out. You're the only person I feel safe with." She wrapped herself around me, shaking. I felt that old instinct rise up. Comfort her. Tell her it's okay. But behind the tears, I saw the pattern. She'd crossed a huge line, and somehow I was already halfway to comforting her for it. That was the moment something hardened in me. I held her, but I didn't say, "It's okay." I didn't say, "We'll figure it out." In my head, I said something else. "I'm done being the bad guy in a story you're writing." That night, while she slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and decided I was done tolerating it. If Lena was going to use me like a safety net, I was going to make sure I was the one who decided when it snapped. Once I decided I was done, everything became strangely clear. Not emotional, not dramatic, just organized. Lena liked to think she was subtle, but she was careless in all the ways that mattered. She used my card freely, lied reflexively, and rewrote history in conversations. All I had to do was stop cleaning up after her and let the truth sit where it fell. My plan wasn't about revenge in the dramatic sense. I wasn't slashing tires or outing her to anyone. I just wanted distance, clarity, and a way out that she couldn't twist into another story where I was the villain. Step one was the money. I opened a new checking account and moved most of my next paycheck into it. I left just enough in the shared account to look normal. My card stopped working the next time she tried to use it, and when she asked, I told her the bank must have flagged something. That was technically true. There had been plenty to flag. She groaned about being cursed with bad luck and asked if she could borrow my backup card. For 2 days max, I told her I'd misplaced it. She didn't push. She was already working on other sources. Step 2 was evidence, though I didn't frame it that way. I just stopped deleting texts, stopped letting her rewrite what she'd said the night before. If she snapped at me, I'd ask calmly, "Can you repeat that?" If she denied a lie, I'd say, "You told me yesterday at noon," and watch her freeze for half a second before spinning a new story. I stayed steady, not cold, just unmoved. It threw her off balance. The more I stopped reacting, the more she escalated. Not in volume, but in frequency. Little digs about my job, silent treatment for things she imagined, jokes about how lucky I was to have her. But I didn't challenge her. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I watched. Step 3 was the apartment. Our lease was up in 6 weeks. For months, she'd insisted we renew because she loved our place. But once I started paying attention, her version of love really meant she liked not paying rent on time and still having a roof over her head. I called the landlord privately and asked a simple question. Does the lease have to be renewed jointly? It didn't. It could be signed by either or both of us, or neither. I told him I wasn't sure yet, but thanked him for the information. He didn't ask questions. Step 4 was the hardest. I had to keep living normally while planning my exit. Every morning felt like walking through wet cement. I still cooked dinner most nights, still did laundry, still listened to her talk about work drama. But my mind was somewhere else, tracking, preparing, waiting. She gave me one last gift without meaning to. One night, she left her phone on the counter while showering. A notification popped up, just the preview, of a message from the same guy she'd been photographed with. Nothing graphic, just familiar. Tonight was fun. Same tomorrow? I didn't touch her phone. I didn't need to. When she came back into the kitchen, humming, wrapped in a towel, she didn't see me watching her. She grabbed her phone, glanced at the screen, and flinched almost invisibly when she noticed the notification was still there. She waited a few seconds before flipping it face down, pretending nothing happened. That was the moment I knew my plan was airtight. She'd been using me financially, emotionally, mentally. Now she was using me logistically. A convenient man to live with while she entertained options elsewhere. And she genuinely believed I was too soft, too loyal, too scared to ever walk away. The next week, she announced she was going on a girls' night. No details, no invite. Just the kind of vague explanation she offered when she didn't want questions. "Have fun," I said. She looked surprised. Usually I asked who was going, where they were meeting, what time she'd be home. But I just smiled like everything was normal. She left at 8. By 8:20, I'd placed her keys, her spare jacket, and the little things she always left around the apartment into a plastic bin and set it by the door. I packed my essentials into 2 duffel bags: clothes, documents, the tools I used for work, the book my brother gave me, nothing more. At 9 p.m., I walked down to the landlord's unit, signed a lease for a small studio he had open in the back building, and handed him the deposit. At 9:30, I returned to our apartment, locked the door behind me, and sat at the kitchen table. Not sad, not angry, just ready. I wrote her a note, short, calm, final. Then I placed my old house key on top of it, turned off the lights, grabbed my bags, and walked out. No yelling, no argument, no dramatic final scene. Just a quiet exit from a life she thought I'd never have the strength to leave. And that was the real revenge. She wouldn't see it coming until the moment she realized I was already gone. I moved into the studio the same night I left. It wasn't much, just a small room with a creaky floor, an ancient fridge, and a window that wouldn't close all the way, but it felt peaceful in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. I slept on the floor the first night using my jacket as a pillow, and still, it was the best sleep I'd had in months. Lena didn't call right away. I figured she was out with the guy from the photo or whoever else she'd lined up. But the next morning, the messages started. First, "Where are you?" Then, Did you seriously take your stuff? Then anger. You're being dramatic. We need to talk. Then guilt. I can't believe you'd abandon me like this. I didn't respond. Not out of spite, just clarity. There was nothing left to explain. That evening, she switched to calls. 9 of them in a row. Then a voicemail where she cried, screamed, and accused me of ruining everything. The next day, she showed up at the grocery store during my shift. I saw her through the glass windows near the entrance. Hair messy, pacing, eyes darting around like she was searching for a lost dog. I didn't go out. My manager told her she couldn't wander the aisles waiting for me. She tried to block the door when I brought carts back in, but I kept walking. Can you just talk to me? She begged, stepping backward in front of me. You blindsided me. You owe me a conversation. I didn't raise my voice, didn't argue. I just said, we're done, and walked past her. She followed me halfway to the back of the store before a coworker stepped in and told her she needed to leave. I didn't even ask him to. People had seen more than I realized. After that, the tone of her messages changed. She accused me of cheating, accused me of stealing her share of the apartment. She never paid it. Accused me of embarrassing her with my dramatic exit. She told mutual friends I'd been controlling, manipulative, unstable. Some reached out to me privately. Most didn't bother her with confrontations. They just stopped inviting her places. Turns out people had seen patterns in her long before I did. Meanwhile, I settled into my new life. I cooked simple meals. I kept my space clean because it felt good, not because I feared a comment. I reconnected with my brother and actually showed up when I said I would. I took walks after work with no one texting. Where are you? Why so late? A week later, I went back to the old apartment with the landlord. Anything that belonged to me was already gone. Anything that was hers was still piled in that bin by the door. She hadn't touched it. She had moved out too, left the place dirty, a few broken glasses, stains on the carpet, and an empty cabinet where anything valuable used to be. She bailed halfway through the month, didn't tell the landlord, didn't pay a cent. He sent me the final walkthrough photos and shook his head. She thought I'd chase after her for the rent, he said. You handled it better than most folks. In the end, she'd run from the apartment the same way she ran from any responsibility in her life. She just didn't have me standing there to absorb the impact anymore. A couple months passed before the messages finally stopped. Not because she understood, but because she'd found new people to lean on, drain, and blame. My revenge wasn't ruining her life. It wasn't exposing her. It wasn't chasing her down for apologies she'd never mean. My revenge was walking away so quietly, so completely, that she had to face herself for once. There was no fight she could win, no story she could twist, no guilt she could weaponize. Just the empty space where I used to stand, holding everything together. These days, when I unlock the door to my little studio, I feel something I didn't realize I'd been missing. Peace. Not the dramatic, cinematic kind, just the simple kind. The kind you earn when you finally choose yourself.